I spaced out and got caught up eating. So I was like eating a giant bowl of pasta, and I was like, how'd I mess that up? I was like, I'm just gonna eat real quick and then I'm gonna jump on. That's the truth. I know it's embarrassing, but that's what happened. Okay. Alrighty, guys. Today is January 5th, 2024. This is class 4 of FoP. And today we're going to start off with asking for a volunteer to show off bot score, what we left off yesterday. Can I have a volunteer? All right. How about this? How far did we get? You guys got to tell me something. If not, I don't really know where or like how to proceed. Where did we get stuck on?
Honestly, I didn't really get too far, really do too much on it. I kind of still have a little bit of actually trying to grasp really well how to really link or access some of the data from, like, say, the returned from like the APIs and stuff. So yesterday, I think even when somebody was explaining their code, it took me a little while just to try to I think where I was stuck was getting the information from one of the nested arrays, or the object of the one that described what kind or the type of Pikachu or type of Pokemon it was. So I was struggling with that. So I was kind of looking over some of that stuff. So I'm still, I think, getting or linking pretty much, or accessing objects for me is still a little bit I mean, not confusing, but it's kind of hard sometimes to get the actual, like, because it's obviously got to be real specific. So I kind of get stuck sometimes between that and linking it to some sort of ID or class in the HTML. So yeah, I didn't really get too far, honestly. So
Okay.
yeah,
So we have a little bit of an issue parsing the objects. That's okay.
yeah.
That will come with time. What other issues are we running into?
For me, I think that's pretty much it, the major thing. Not sure if somebody else has something.
All right, let's look at bot score. What's the first thing you want to try to do for bot score? Kind of on a macro scale. So yes, you might have questions about local storage. But messing with local storage is actually not the first thing you need to do. What's the first thing you should probably do in this assignment?
Do we need to create those buttons, or start with getting something done in in HTML to have those buttons in there?
Yeah, very good. So the first thing you could do is just add the buttons, right? Then you could console log it, maybe use your dev tools, console log the value, make sure it's registering. And then adding it to local storage is actually the last thing, right? So if we tackled it that way, I'm going to put James on the spot. James, how far did you get?
Um, Honestly, I haven't even looked at this. I have decided to kind of go back to the basics and rework the pre-work stuff. I'm having a lot of trouble just in general grasping this and moving between the three different files and different the HTML, CSS kind of thing. So not very far at all.
Guillermo,
Give
since
me
it
that,
seems like
Guillermo.
since it looks like we didn't really get too far.
Sorry about that. Okay, so this is what we're going to do. I'm going to give you a plan of attack. How about this? Go ahead and open bot score, and I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing. Can you see my VS code? Yes? Okay, I'm going to open it with live server, just like we did yesterday. Okay, I'm going to start you off. This is going to be your assignment, but I will start you off here. What's the first thing we said we were going to do? Here's your assignment right here on line 14.
We said we were going to start with the button.
Yeah, okay. So let's go. What do you want to start with? You said a button, which one?
You start with a button that adds 1.
Let's do it. If I can type. Ooh, sweet. Now what? Walk me through this.
We'll do it again with one that subtracts.
There you go. Then what? That's looking pretty good.
Is that a reset button?
There you go. That's a start, right? Sweet. Now what? Don't let me do it for you. This is for you. Now what?
Now we need to probably jump over to the JavaScript to make them do something.
Okay, cool. Here's my JavaScript. Let's comment this out for now, right? I mentioned the local storage and storing all the values there. That's really the last thing. Really, what's the first thing I want to do here? I want to get that number, that count to show up where?
In the DOM?
Yeah. I can console log it, you see it in my DevTools if I want, and then I want to see it in my DOM, really. I mean, you can skip the DevTools part and just put it on your DOM if you can do it, if that comes to you, right? But you want to see it in the DOM first to know that your function is working, that all your logic is accurate. And once that is good, you can go ahead and figure out how to set it in local storage. So when you refresh the page, it won't go away, and I'll still keep the same count. Yes? All right. So we commented out local storage. Sweet. Now what? I need to do what with my buttons? Let's start with +1. What do I have to do with +1?
Yeah, listen for the click on the button.
Yeah, I have to listen for the click on the button on the +1. Okay, so how do I do that?
Dom dot Dom
Yeah, there you go.
document.
Can you just point me to what? I could just go to background colors or bad calculator, one of them, right? Look at their app. It's something
Yeah.
like this, right? Literally just a copy paste job, right? This is bot score. So I need something like this, right? And let me do a function, right? Function add one, something like that. And then here, it's not going to be turned purple, but add one. This is getting pretty close. I can have a total. Let total equal, let's just make it 0 for now. And here I can just return total for now. All right, we're getting pretty close there. What am I missing here on line 1?
Link it to the button.
Yeah, I have to link it to the appropriate button. Okay, so how do I do that? I'm in my HTML here.
You can add an ID to the button, each one, so that way we can distinguish them.
Let's do it. ID, let's call it +1. That's my ID for my +1 button. Okay, cool. Here is going to be +1, right? It's going to be +1. That's my ID, right? Sweet. Okay. So I have an event listener on the ID +1. If I look at bot score here, the ID is +1. So when I click it, it's going to run the function +1, right? All right. If I click on the +1 right now, what am I going to see in my terminal right here in my console log in my browser? If I press +1 right now, what am I going to see?
0.
All right, let's see. If I get that 0, that means my button's functional. I didn't see it, but that's because I can't return that, right? I have to what? I have to console log it. All right, let's try that again. +1. Ooh, look at that. Is my button functional? Is my button functional?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Now, this is not all the way there, right? But I know that I am going to need how many buttons?
3.
So how many query selectors am I going to need?
3.
3. And I'm going to go ahead and give them these IDs right now, because instead of +1, how about -1? And how about reset for this ID? And instead of add 1, how about -1? And here, how about I just call the function reset? And I can copy this, I can paste it, and this is -1. And here I can just do, hey, -1 hitting. I'm just testing it. Let me get functionality in all my buttons, and then I can worry about everything else later. Okay, so I have my -1, but I know that I don't have an ID of -1. So I can go to my HTML, and instead of this button having that ID, let me just assign that second button the ID of -1. Sweet. When I click on -1 right here, what am I going to see in my terminal, in my console log?
Would be 0 again.
Will it?
Oh, no. It says -1 hitting.
-1 hitting. Let's see if that's true. Is my minus button functional? Yes? Alrighty. How would I do line 3? How would I complete that query selector?
We'd create a third function,
Call it what?
call it reset.
Call it reset. And then here I'm just going to put reset as a string. Let me get it functional. I can worry about the logic later. And then I'm going to go to my HTML and I'm going to give it the ID of what?
Reset.
Yeah, I think I gave it the ID of reset. Alrighty, saved it. When I click this reset button, I should get whatever my string is, reset right there. Let's see it. There you go. My reset button works. My -1 works. My +1 works. All 3 buttons work. What's the next step?
Do we need to like get the buttons to actually add one or subtract one from the total? So each function. maybe
Yes,
can-
but you're jumping the gun a little bit. That is true. But what do we want to do first? Get something to show up where?
Oh, we still need to show our count
Where?
on the DOM or
Yes.
yeah.
Let's start showing something on the DOM. Even what we're showing is wrong. Cool. Let's get it to show on the DOM because that's a problem in itself. So I want to show something on the DOM when I click a button. Doesn't matter which button. How do I take it from here? Someone tell me, how do I get something to show up on the DOM on the add one? Let's work with this function. I want to add something, doesn't even matter what. Right here, I want to get something to show up on the DOM. How do I do it?
Inside of the add one function at the bottom, throw in a document that query selector,
Yes. Keep going.
and then we want to put in our H4 header and then dot inner text, and then that would equal our and then equal total.
Yep, exactly like that. So I'm actually just going to go to bad calculator JS. I'm going to look at that previous code. Yep, this is the line right here. I'm just going to copy it. Going to copy it, then I'm going to close it. And I know that this is going to be a version of this line. And I'm going to, where am I going to inject it? Let me look at my HTML. Where does this go? Show local storage count here. That's the H4. Thank you, Donna. You were right. I just needed to check. So here, this is my H4. H4. And here I could just put total, right? Like I'm just gonna do hey, whatever. Alrighty. I'm gonna refresh. When I click the +1 button, what am I gonna get in the DOM?
Zero.
No. When I click my +1
Hey.
button, what am I gonna get in the DOM?
Hey.
Hey. Is that hey? Can you take it from here? Can you take it from here, ladies and gentlemen? Donna, you saying something?
My bad. I gotta like click over. Yeah, I got like functionality working, buttons working and everything. I'm just stuck on the getting it to go to the local storage thing, but
Okay. I'm going to do a little bit more, but then I'm going to give you 10 minutes to finish this, okay? I'm going to give you a little bit more. I'm not going to do it all for you, though. All right, so here we go. Let's get add one into whatever. I'm just going to actually do total. And for right now, I'm going to set total to 444. Sorry. I'm going to set total to 444. Something very distinctive, right? And I'm gonna get rid of this console log because I don't need it anymore, right? And if I wanted to set this is a code, right? I have it. So let's look at it. Let's look at it here. Local storage set item count to 1. So if I uncomment this, and instead of count, I put total. And I'm going to refresh my thing. And I press +1 here. What's going to show up on the DOM? In this line right here, when I press +1, what's going to show up on the DOM?
444.
Yes. If I go check my local storage, I'm going to have a key of count and a value of what?
1 or whatever's in that line.
Look at it again.
Total.
What?
444.
Is that what's in there?
Yeah.
There you go.
So just quick question for the assignment. So like as you click the button, should that value inside the local storage continue to change? Like what's
Yes,
reflected?
and that's the crux to the whole thing.
Okay, okay. Okay.
When I
I
add
didn't
one and I subtract one, not only is the change going to be shown on the DOM, but it's going to mimic the local storage. Remember, local storage here is acting as a quasi database, and the values must always match.
Okay. I got it. I was confusing myself. I I was like trying to figure out. I thought you like wanted like every time we clicked it to like keep adding to the value. like I don't know.
No,
I
I do.
confused myself.
So if I had 0 here and I added 1, I want it to be 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And in local count and local storage is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. And if you subtract, the DOM is going to say 3, 2, 1. But the local storage is also going to go down 3, 2, 1. And you can actually have both of these open at the same time so you can see if it's working.
Okay. Okay. Okay, never mind. I'm still confused then.
Okay, let's do a little bit more. Thank you for your honesty, Donnie. Okay, so here, let's go with total just 0. Right? And then total, we're going to do just 0. Okay, so add 1 does what to total?
Total plus plus.
Yeah.
Or
Total.
total plus
Yeah, you could
one.
have done it that way too, Donnie. I'm going to do it this way just because. But yeah, total plus plus would have been just fine. Okay, so here I'm going to add 1 and I'm going to show the total. Right? And I'm also going to set it. Right? So I'm going to refresh the page. And I'm going to do +1. Notice the DOM shows 1. And what's my value in local storage?
1,
If I add another one,
2.
what do you see?
It increasing, matching the DOM.
There you go. This works, right? This is exactly what we want.
Oh, okay. Well, then I do have it.
Okay, except for my -1 doesn't work. And my reset doesn't work. But my +1 works. So this is pretty close. See, it's still working, right?
Yeah.
Notice when I refresh my page, the value of local storage doesn't change, right? This shouldn't change either. That's another challenge that you have. Does that make sense? This should stay until you reset. So we got the easy part. This is the easy part. Now you just, the next thing I would work on is the -1 and then the reset. So once you get the -1 working, and that's going to be very similar because the code is almost identical, then you're going to get the reset. And the reset's also pretty straightforward. After all that is done, work on refreshing the page and making sure that the DOM doesn't reset if the value in local storage doesn't reset. That's the stretch challenge here, because that's what it's supposed to do. Right? Because when you log into Amazon and you refresh the page, it doesn't log you out of your account, does it? It doesn't magically remove your items from your shopping cart or anything crazy like that? No? This is very similar. The concept is the same. What's the 2-word thing I want you to learn in this? Does anyone remember? I kind of said it a lot yesterday. The what of data. The persistence of data. Super important. Do you think you can figure out the last piece?
Guillermo, is the reset button supposed to reset to 0 or reset to the number that it was initially at?
Reset clears. So it resets it to 0 and it puts the value in local storage to 0. It could be an empty string, I suppose. I don't think it's going to affect much, but it should clear all the count to 0. What questions do you have? Now's the time. If I do this, what's going to happen? You see what I did that there? I copied line 13 and made it the actual default value of total when it's initialized. What is this going to
Yeah.
do?
It's going to let total equal what's in local storage.
Okay, let's see. Saved it. What's happening?
Did it convert it to a string or
Yeah, it converted it to a string, and it's not really mathematically adding it. It's doing what?
just added to the string?
No, it's adding it like a string, right? I keep adding ones. Look, the string's getting bigger. It's because it's being held as what inside of local storage, something we didn't cover actually. Is being held as a what? If it's doing this, it can only stand to reason that is being held as what data type within local storage?
String?
String. So you need to change this to a number. Let's try that again. If I do +1, I get this big number. And I really have to do what? I really should clear it. So I'll go ahead and do this. I'll go ahead and just run the function and set it to 0. You can just disregard this part. Just gonna +1, make it 0. I'm gonna refresh. Okay. So here, I'm gonna do total again. So now count is inside my local storage, right? And the value is 0. Right? So when I press 1, what's gonna happen?
Go to 1 and go up to 1.
It goes to 1. Goes to 2, goes to 3, goes to 4, goes to 5, goes to 6. If I refresh, what's going to happen?
The page will reset, but your local storage should stay 6.
Okay, am I gonna get the 6 in the Dom? Yes or no?
I don't think so.
Let's see. It didn't persist, right? So you're gonna have to figure that out. Right, because the 6 didn't change, right? And that's what we want. Unless you change it, it's gonna be there forever. What else do you want to see before I cut you loose? Remember, it's being held as a string. That's why I wrapped it in a number. Right here. Or casted it, I believe is the right word. If I wanted to reset this, what would I do here?
Total equals 0.
Yeah. I could just do total equals 0, and then go ahead and set it again. It'd be really similar, right? Let's see if that works. The only thing I'm missing is my reset. Does my reset work? Yeah, I think it works. Okay, let's try it. Let's work it with 0. And let's see if it works. If I press 1, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Now when I hit this reset button, both should reset to 0, right? That's the behavior that we want. So this value should clear and this value should clear. And they do. There you go. I gave you too much already. Last minute questions. Alrighty, dudes. This is where I leave you. We're gonna give you 10 minutes. Roger's gonna put 10 minutes on his little timer. And then you guys can debrief it after. I wish you guys the best of luck. Sorry for being late. I was being a fat boy. I'm typically not late. I don't like when people I actually get mad at my girlfriend all the time because she's late all the time. And now it's me. I will hold myself to a higher standard. I wish you the best of luck. And guys, please make it very, very easy for Roger to teach you. I used to teach high school, and especially during COVID, it was really challenging to teach people. They had the cameras off. You couldn't even tell if they were there or they were playing like Call of Duty on the side, like you can't tell as a teacher, Make it easy for him to teach you, right? Because this is ultimately just about you, right? For you. And if you're like me, you should love you and want what's best for you, right? All right, I leave you. Good luck, guys. Let me know if you guys need anything.
See ya.
Hey, appreciate it, Guillermo. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right. So just like Guillermo said, we'll get 10 minutes in. Just a little background on me. I'm going to be the new instructor for FoP, which is why we were doing this kind of like left seat, right seat. Guillermo was the previous instructor and the person who overall built the curriculum. This isn't my first time teaching it. I taught the last one. Something that came up and he couldn't teach the remainder of the FoP, so I kind of stepped in, and then they kind of ended up giving me the position because Guillermo has a lot on his plate right now. But it's not the first time, so hopefully I can help you guys in whatever manner I can. If at any point you guys have like any questions whatsoever, do not hesitate to like stop me in my tracks. And just interrupt me. Let me know, hey, Lee, I'm confused, or can you explain this a little bit more, and whatnot. I'm very laid back as well, and I like to give you guys a lot of more personal time to ensure you guys get to work on your assignments. So after this assignment, we're gonna have a little bit more of a solo assignment where I'm gonna break you guys into groups where we'll open up like breakout rooms and you guys can work on it. Since today now we have a smaller class than we usually do throughout the week, then we'll just do individual rooms for each other yourself. That way I can just bounce between the rooms and give you guys some like one-on-one instruction in case you guys are struggling. And that way, for those of you that don't like asking questions from the people, you guys can ask whatever questions you guys have, and I can work for you guys. So instead of doing like 10 minutes, well, we can go ahead and do that now. Give you guys a little explanation for it. I feel like you guys weren't. I feel like you were struggling a little bit. Am I wrong? Do you guys feel like maybe you can use a little bit more on one-on-one, a little bit more instruction on this? Yeah. Okay. Good. So, because the assignment after this is going to be like no code whatsoever. It's going to be, hey, build this, and it's not going to be like I'm not going to start it up for you. Like it's meant to give you kind of like the wrap up the front end HTML portion of this course. So it's imperative that you guys understand how to do this. So we'll break up into rooms, and then you guys can work on it your own, and we'll bounce through. Instead of 10 minutes, we'll do 15 minutes specifically for that reason, and then we'll reconvene. How does that sound? Good. All right, awesome. So I'm gonna go ahead and pause this, and then we'll go straight into the breakout rooms. Hello? Sorry, I was muted. All right, guys. So welcome back. That took a little bit longer than expected, but I think for some of y'all that really helped out. Is there any questions before we move forward with the assignments? Anything that you guys like to cover or discuss as a group? You didn't, really understand or get anything at all? Okay, awesome. So the next one we're going to be doing is the NASA picture of the day API. Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah.
Awesome. So if you guys look at the repo, there's nothing really there. Because this one's gonna be a more hands-off approach from myself or any instructor in general. It's gonna be more on you guys. This one is where it's gonna wrap up everything you guys have been discussing for this last week, and it's gonna be up to you guys to figure out how to start the assignment. If you look at the README, it looks something like this, where you're gonna check out the astronomy picture of the day API from the NASA website, and it's linked here for you guys. And then it's gonna be up to you guys to read the documents for this API yourself, and figure out how to manipulate it and how to ping this API. Because every API I discussed prior to this, it's completely different, right? If any of you guys ever check out Spotify API, it's gonna be it's a different beast in comparison to the API for like the cocktail one or the Pokemon one. Some APIs require you to like have a membership with them, or they require access keys that are only an hour long, and then you need a refresh token to refresh that access key. So they're all different. The ones that you use so far in the FoP course have been very simple, very straightforward, that anyone can just ping themselves. But as you start, looking at other APIs, you're gonna realize that they're not all as user friendly as the other ones, right? So pretty much it's going to be on yourself, on your own. There's going to be no startup code. There's no template, right? It's going to be up to you guys to ensure that you have the appropriate files for it, right? Make sure you have your HTML file, your CSS file, and whatnot. And then you're going to read the docs. You're going to build a small application yourself. It's going to display the pictures of the day for any day that the user chooses, right? So it's going to take some form of user input. There'll be no starter code whatsoever. But you guys pretty much already have an idea of how to get the boilerplate template of an HTML file. So it's pretty straightforward. Just ensure that you link your files together. You're also going to see that that there's also another resource here for you guys for APIs that you want to check out. We're going to break out into breakout rooms, and I'm going to be bouncing through them as well, right? So if you have any questions whatsoever, if you get stuck or you don't even know how to start, just let me know. We're going to take a little bit longer than usual on this one. mainly because usually it's kind of like a end of the night assignment. Since today is the last day for the week, I want to end off with this assignment specifically before we even start a different topic. So, take your time to really hone down your HTML skills on this, because tomorrow is going to be a little bit something different. Instead of working with APIs, we're going to be working with CRUD, and that's a different format as well. So, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Now's the time. Anything before we move on to breakout rooms? All right, awesome. We'll go ahead and start that up.
Got a question, Roger? Well, I guess it's just asked in the chat as well. Yeah, where are we finding the practice folder for this?
Oh, my bad. That's mine. So that's my own practice folder.
Okay.
Yeah. So I have my own copy of the repo. I have the practice folder for myself. So like for future assignments, whenever you guys need like an answer key or whatever, or if you guys want to see like how it should look like, that's where I keep all mine. So that'll be for the future. But yeah, that's my own practice folder. Sorry for that.
Okay. Is there
Any other questions?
No, go ahead.
Awesome. We'll go ahead and move out to the breakout rooms. Hello. All right, welcome back. I think we're missing just Jose. The breakout rooms are closing. He's still in there, but he'll be back in a bit. All right, so hopefully that was enough time. I think some of you guys were just very confused with the documentation. Am I correct?
Yeah.
All right, so we'll wait for Jose before we continue. There he is. All right, so let me share my screen. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about the API and like the thought process behind it, and then afterwards, I would like Donnie, if that's okay, with you, Donnie, if you don't mind explaining your code and how you got to that conclusion.
Okay.
But first and foremost, let me share my screen. All right, can everyone see my screen? Okay, so here on my screen, we see the API.NASA API website. As discussed before, some APIs are going to take a little bit more or going to ask a little bit more from you before they give you any form of access to their documentation. So the first thing you guys should have seen here is the fact that they're asking you to generate an API key. Unlike the Pokemon one, where I don't believe they asked for an API key. You guys were able just to be able to ping it immediately, and it give you back information. This one's going to ask for an API key. So if you put in your information, your email, it should give you one in your email. And then if you scroll down, you'll see that it'll bring you to the list of APIs that it offers. If you guys read through, you should have seen that one of them is called the Astronomy Picture of the Day API. We obviously left you guys in the dark, so you guys were able to, practice doing research on your own. But it should have brought you to this area right here. Reading through it, it gives you an example of what the API offers. By clicking on it, it will show you exactly the information, how it would be displayed. But that's not exactly what we wanted. What we wanted was the exact documentation for this API. And the very bottom, you see that it'll give you a link to the GitHub repository for all this information. Upon clicking this API, it would have brought you to its repo. At first glance, it might be a little intimidating, but what we were looking for specifically was like more like a README or a documentation for the API itself. If you guys scroll down, you should encounter the table of contents. Clicking the docs would have brought you down to the section that you should have looked for. All right. So the way that the APIs work typically is going to be some form of a URL, and the URL is going to take usually some way to authenticate yourself, and then the different types of parameters that it offers. Right. The API for NASA, the one for the picture they specifically here, if we read through it, you can see here that we have the URL search parameters. Right. These are the different parameters that the API will take and will return something to you. The first one you see here is the API key, right? It even tells you that it's going to be demonstrated as demo key in the URL, and it has a link for it to sign up for it and grab one if you didn't. And then, but what we're really looking for is a date one. Most of these websites, all these APIs, if you look through the documentation, it will tell you exactly how to, request certain items and in what format and what manner. Here it's going to take a date in this format here, where it's going to be the year first dash month dash day. Even explain it here in case there's any kind of confusion if you weren't sure which one was the day or month. But this is how the date is going to be formatted. As you scroll down, it'll even give you, demo code, right? The one that we really want is one like this or this one. Don't worry too much about the local host ones. What we're looking for was something simple, just like the URL here, right? You have the base URL, which is going to be the api.nasa.gov. As we see here, the next items here are its sub APIs that it provides. The one that we're specifically using was the APOD one. And then immediately after that, it starts taking parameters. The first parameter it took was the API key, which is why I told you guys like you needed the key itself. Once getting the key, all you have to do was essentially just change the demo key with your specific key that you got. I'm not sure if this key itself has a limit. Some keys that you'll encounter will have like a 1 hour limit itself, or like 24 hours, and then they'll even offer different ways to get a new one. The most common one is your refresh token. They'll give you an access key and a refresh token key, which you will use to get a new key. It can get very confusing very easily. Luckily, this one was very user friendly. And then we have something here, an example of how it would take a parameter. Here, it separates your parameters with ampersands, and then it takes the parameter itself on the left, and then with an equal sign to the right of it, giving it its value. What some of you guys use, which is very helpful, and recommend that you guys use, is your Postman. I've been using it forever. Give me a second. What's cool about Postman is it'll help you take in these different parameters and experiment with the API before you put anything in code, right? You can see if it works or not, if it's even, because sometimes you encounter some APIs that they don't keep up with their stuff, and it might be an outdated API and won't give you what you're looking for. Of course, my password doesn't work. All right, give me a second so I can fix this real quick. Sorry if you guys hear my kid in the background. Give me a second. I'm trying to get a new path for this. Because I haven't used it in forever. But essentially, for those of you that use Postman, what's cool about Postman is that it has a little section where you put the different type of parameters, and it'll pre-format it for you, without you having to, edit the URL itself. You can pre-format it. There's other sections for it, like your header that it assists with as well. But yeah, so let's go with create workspace. Jesus Christ. So I get for not using Postman for so long. All right, whatever. Anyways, but yeah, so if you guys have Postman, you can essentially put in on the bottom, it'll give you your parameters, and you're able to give it a value, and it'll pre-format that URL for you. The moment you press send, it'll put in that request to the API, and it should return to you a JSON object. And that'll let you know if your API that you're using is actually talking to, if it's working with the key and whatnot, or if you need to refresh the key or just use a different API. But once you got that URL, that's the URL that you're going to use for, the communication in your code itself, right? Donnie was pretty good at it. He was able to get it right off the bat. You want to go ahead and share your screen, Donnie?
Yeah.
Well, I'm assuming that the hard part for you guys was trying to decipher, like, how the API works or what information you're looking for. A lot of times it can be very hard to take in all that information. If you just take a step-by-step look for, the docs, and then look for the URL and parameters, and then what exactly it's taking. The flow of authentication, they usually provide some form of a chart of what they're looking for. This wasn't going to be anything like too crazy to overthink. All you're supposed to do is just take a date, talk to the API, and then get back a picture. So go ahead, Donnie, take it away.
All right. So starting out with the HTML. Wait, can everybody hear me? All right, cool. Starting out with HTML, I just linked the style sheet, and then down in the body, I have to run an H1 header, and I just put astronomy picture of the day. And then I threw in an input type with a value date to give me the date input. I did a little research on that, and it just so happened that the format that we would need for the API was the same as the format that would come back from the user. And then I threw the button, just threw submit on it for a submit button. And then I just threw it in a div just so I could center everything. I don't know. It's probably a better way to do that. I don't know. And then I put a empty image for the source, because obviously we'll have the API send the source based off the date. And then I linked the JavaScript. And then over in JavaScript, I just threw in a query selector for my submit button, and then called the get fetch function. And then inside of the get fetch function, I would set a date to take the value that the user put in. And then for the API, I threw in a URL, and then I concatenated it. The rest, I ain't gonna lie, I struggle with the figuring out the last part of the API, but eventually I got it. And then I just use backticks to throw in the value of date. And then I copied the rest of this from the Pokemon one that we did. And then I got a they had an example on the NASA one, like a test key or something like that, that like showed you like a random one. And I used that to like go in and find out where to find the image. And it just so happened to be it would be the data that came back and then URL to grab the image. And that was pretty much it. And so you just throw in a date and then you hit submit and then they give you the picture of the day. And obviously you put in random whatever day you want to put in, and then it gives you the day. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah, it's awesome, Donnie. Anyone have any questions about how you did it, or you know, if you did it differently, if you got stuck on something that you need to be explained, uh, anything at all whatsoever? Okay. Yeah, so that's pretty much going to be everything that we have for the day. Next week we're going to start off with lesson 6. I believe it's CRUD applications. I know some of you guys already started reading ahead and started working on some of the assignments. That's you guys can do that too. I love the enthusiasm. But I would recommend that you guys, instead of looking ahead, take this weekend to go over everything that was covered this week. You're going to, get more practice of everything starting the immersive program. But once you start in the immersive program, you're going to realize it's gonna be a very slow start the first week. After the first week, it's gonna ramp up, and it's gonna be a fire hose of information. So if you can kind of get down like the basics of what you've covered so far, take this weekend to go over and solidify the information that you received. It'll be so much easier once you actually start the immersive program. I remember when I went through, I was very excited, right? You find that you get all this new stuff and new information. You're trying stuff out. You're seeing buttons and stuff appear on the screen, and you're getting results back, and it's very exciting. And you want to go, get ahead of the game and try different stuff and whatnot. But I promise you, you'll do yourself a disservice by trying to get ahead and just whatnot, instead of just focusing on, take it 1 week at a time and solidify what's being taught at that moment, or for that week. It will do you a lot more in the long run, in that manner. I promise you. Because before you know it, it's gonna be way too much information to keep up with, and it's only gonna get harder. I promise you. One thing that I wanna ask from you guys: do you guys use Chat GPT? Just raise your hand real quick if you've used it or not. Have any experience with it. It's not bad. I'm curious to know how many of you guys use it or not. No, none of y'all.
I try to stay towards Stack Overflow.
Okay.
That's what I try to stay towards. I try to stay away from stuff like ChatGPT because I don't want it to give me like the answer, if that makes sense. Like I kind of want some understanding with it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Anybody else? You guys don't use it? No one here uses it at all. Is what we're saying.
I
After
use it sometimes, but I don't understand it. That's why I just kind of stop using it.
Yeah.
Because their codes is really fancy, like what like that. So I'm our class pace is really fast. I don't think we even have time to look at it, understand that, I think.
Okay. Jose, you were gonna say something?
After Guillermo brought up the fact like that kind of more against it in a sense, and then he did mention that the only way he does or has used it was to look for a better solution to something where he's struggling to figure out something. So I did it once or twice earlier on for something where I know I like did the brute force method and pretty much did everything like really really bad. I guess it's just a long code for something that probably is a lot more simple. And just like she said, the response I got from it when I asked it to get a better code was way over my head, and I was probably gonna spend more time trying to understand it than actually grasp any concept. I just again I tried it once or twice and I let it go.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Yeah, man, ChatGPT, it's kind of like a double-edged sword, right? It can help you in your time of need, but you did too much and it'll become a crutch, and it can bite you in the butt in the long run. Specifically, right now that you guys are starting off, I would try to, refrain from using ChatGPT as much as you can, but it is a very helpful and a very strong tool to use. We'll discuss a little bit more on AI closer to the end of the course itself, so we can talk about healthy and helpful manners of using it, because it is a very strong tool. And the reason I say that is because sometimes, and the further you get into the immersive course, the bigger your code is going to be, the more complex. Right, you're going to be working with the front end, the back end, and your database, and you're trying to do multiple things. And there's just so much code, so many files that you're not going to be able to keep track of. And sometimes it helps to be able to, copy and paste the entire freaking file, put in ChatGPT to make what is going on here. It's gonna happen, and it helps. The reason I say that is because there's times where like you're gonna be staring at your code for hours on end, and you're gonna get nowhere. Like you don't even know what the hell's going on. Like, why is this not working? Right? Like, why is it that when I delete this, when it's supposed to be useless, it breaks my entire code, right? And it's good to be able to look at the code. It's good to get stuck. Like you have to get stuck. You can't get better without messing up, without looking at code, without being in those late nights. But there's also a time to know like when too much is too much. Does that make sense? Like when is debugging and me spending hours and hours on one problem, it is when does it become a waste of time, right? And that it's good to know when that moment hits, right? And the way we do that is you kind of want to have like a timer on yourself of like, all right, you know what, I'm having an issue with this code, I don't understand it. Have a timer, put a 30-minute timer of yourself like trying to like understand your code, look at your code, like see what functions you have, like the variable, where is it going wrong, why is this not doing what I want it to do. And then do some research on your own, and if you just cannot understand it, then that's when AI can be very helpful, right? Because it'll figure out instantly what the issue is, and if used correctly with the correct parameters, and you talk to it how you give me a second. My apologies. My son is the last sometimes. But yeah, so like, sometimes it's helpful just like, I've been on this for 2 hours, like it's 2 a.m. I can't keep looking at this code, and just put in ChatGPT and figure out what the issue is. And it's spoken to correctly, you can ask it like, dumb it down a little bit so I can understand, or break it down line by line, and then if there's something like you say, some of the code just goes over your head, it's too much or too fancy. You can ask it to explain to you in a manner a fifth, 5-year-old kid can understand, and it does. And I say that not to insult you guys, because that's what I tell it to do to me, right? Because learning when I first started off, it is very complicated, just seeing all this extra stuff, and you don't know what is going on, and they'll break it down to you and they'll tell you what every single part is doing and how, and then you can branch off a little bit to understand it, but it can make you a better coder. But if used too much, obviously, it could crush you, right? Because at what point are you just become reliant on what ChatGPT is telling you? But sometimes, like when you first start off, you don't understand the error messages that you are receiving in your code. And right now you're only seeing it in the HTML side, but once you start, doing test cases and whatnot, or you start getting deeper in code, you're gonna receive some error messages like, where is this message at? Like, where is this error at? Like, I don't understand what it's telling me. It sounds foreign to me. Be able to copy that message and ask it to explain to you the error can help out a lot. But yeah, so take this weekend, make sure that you guys, go over the assignment that you didn't complete, all the way through. If there's any questions, I recommend write any question that you may have down, and come Monday, if you guys want to take a couple minutes to ask the question that you had over the weekend, some issues you encountered, something you just didn't understand 100%, we can cover it real quick, and whatnot. But take this time to be able to decompress and actually solidify the information that you receive this week, because Monday we're going to hit CRUD, and then Tuesday we're starting Python. Who has never touched Python before? Right? So Python and JavaScript are very similar, right? But if you're struggling already with JavaScript, if you just started coding, some people come from a good technical, techie background. There's some of us that come here with no experience with computers whatsoever. It's going to get very confusing. So make sure you solidify the information you received this week, because once we start talking about Python, you're going to start getting confused. Like, all right, okay, JavaScript takes functions, but for Python, you have to put def. What an object in JavaScript is called a dictionary in Python. You're going to get very confused very quickly, and the syntax is a little bit different in some cases. And then you're going to have issues with Python instead of having actual issues with the curriculum or like the code itself. So it's gonna be a lot. So make sure that you just focus on what we went over this week. All right. Are there any questions whatsoever before we cut off for the weekend?
Will this VOD be posted on YouTube like the others?
Will this be posted? Yeah, I'll post it tonight. Today.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I just wanted to see how you got to the GitHub thing again.
To the GitHub thing.
Yeah, for the NASA page. Yeah.
Yeah. So it provided you the documentation at the very bottom. It tells you like where it was at. Not all APIs are gonna have like a GitHub repo. Some of them will have documentation itself on their website. This one was a little bit different. It provided you a repo for it. They're not all like that. My Postman finally did pop up though. Before I leave you guys, I just want to cover real quick what I was trying to cover earlier. Mainly because I think you guys were struggling with how to start off, and I think that's probably what took the most time for you guys, is how do I even, get the URL? How do I even talk to the API? And we'll cover Postman. Postman is such a strong tool that it's a shame if you don't use it, because it would just confuse you even more. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. So let me share my screen. Can you see my Postman?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll discuss more on the left side of what this is as well. But we're trying to grab certain information from this API. So the setting that we put on Postman was Git. We put the URL that it gave us. If you guys remember what the website was telling us, that what you call it, it gave us an example of what the code should look like, right? This is what the code should look like. It takes this, and then it's supposed to take the API key. It pre-fills the API key with demo key, and then it gives you the other parameters. So we have the link itself, right? And then I pre-filled my API key that I received via my email in here, and then it took the parameter count equals 5. So this was the example it gave me. The only thing I switched out was my key itself, right? And if you look to the bottom of it, it has this section where it takes parameters, authorization, headers, body. The only thing that you really have to pay attention to right now is parameters. Later on, you'll start getting to like headers and authorization. But the biggest thing right now is parameters. And what it did here, Postman is smart enough to be able to identify the different parameters in your URL, right? And usually because of the way it's built, it has the question mark, and then as soon as the question mark ends, that's typically when it starts putting parameters in there, and it can read that. So it knows that the first parameter it takes is going to be the API key, right? And as you see, it's built off very similar to an object in key value pairs. The first one is the key itself, which is API key. And then it puts equals to let you know that it's going to its value. The value itself is going to be my API key. The next one that it took was another parameter. This one was count. And we put send. It's going to make that GET request, and it's going to return us our JSON file, as that was our JSON object. And this one returned it to me. It's an array, right? That's what the bracket means. It's an array, and inside this array, I have an object, right? As a matter of fact, it's an array of objects, as we see here, right? Why? Because the parameter it asked for was count, and I'm assuming I didn't look too much into the count parameter, but it looks like it's supposed to return 5 different dates, right, at random. And that's what it did. It returned an array of 5 different objects. And we can see here that it's in key value pairs. The different keys are the blue. And then just reading through here, I'm parsing through the data because I'm looking for a URL, specifically my image URL. And we get here, right? We see at the very end of the URL, I see it has .jpeg. So that kind of lets me know, hey, I think this might be an image. So is this one. This one's called URL, but this one's called HT URL. So it's safe to assume it's probably the better rendered image. But we don't want count. You know, what did we say we wanted? We wanted a date. So it was too easy to just come in here and change these parameters, right? So just take off count and put date in here. And then as discussed earlier in the on the parameters, it even gave us the format of how it's supposed to take a date in, right? So that's what's cool about the documentation. It was like, I already know, all right, let's go ahead and put 2015, it's year, and then it's supposed to be the month using 2-digit months. So let's go ahead with December, and then a 2-digit day. So let's go with Christmas Eve. So using the same format the documentation provided, I'm able to successfully, make an API call for the format that I needed, which is for the date. And here, see that we got exactly what we're looking for. And that's how the APIs are used. Now, what if you wanted to use other parameters? Well, you can do exactly that. You can come here and put more stuff in here. Whatever other parameters you wanted, like start date, end date. And it'll do that for you. It'll format it. If you see here to the right, it formats it for you, right? And Postman is very, very, very useful in that manner. And if you don't need that parameter later on, you can just check it off. But yeah, this is how it works. And do not hesitate to use Postman before making your API calls. It'll give you a better example of what the data is instead of trying to decipher it in your DOM. But yeah, that's going to conclude what we discussed for today. And then we'll go straight into the weekend. Do I have any questions whatsoever before we're done for the day? All right. Awesome. I'll stay here for another 5 minutes in case anyone wants to ask anything. But if not, I guess I'll see you guys Monday evening.
Hey, Roger.
Yes.
Do you have any recommendation on, like, right now actually we're doing the FoP because it's kind of a good structure before actually going into the immersive, but I mean maybe a couple of guys here too, or I mean just I don't know if some of these guys already know enough that they're pretty familiar with just JavaScript or Python in general, and so this is maybe easy for them to implement that. But like if you're still kind of trying to learn the Python or JavaScript, while also right now implementing CSS and HTML, do you recommend to just try to focus on the FoP, or still try to do like the Python stuff, like the Scrimba, like all the references that Guillermo gave us in the pre-work stuff.
Are you trying to say that you don't know what to focus on, whether to focus on your language or focus on the curriculum? Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Right. Yep. Because it,
Okay.
it seems like if we want to follow FOP and try to like get the best out of it, you pretty much have to, at least for me, I feel like I need to put almost every hour that I get extra into